Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So on my Rumble channel, if you don't know what that is, look up 505 BROU. There I gave a very impassioned speech about basically what's going on in the 2A world. I'm very sick and tired of seeing disingenuous people come at us and tell us about stats and statistics when they have no clue what they actually mean. You know, we've talked about on this podcast, specifically on the audio podcast, we've talked about how the statistic that they're being quoted right now for the CDC saying that the most gun deaths by youth are now caused by firearms. That's not correct. If you discount gang violence and anyone 18 or younger from that poll or from that data, you find out that that's not correct. Guns do not account for the most firearms deaths of our youth. What does is accidental death and suicide when you start talking about firearms deaths specifically, but other than that, it's other diseases, other accidents. We're at that point in today's society where you have to look at the federal government and understand that they're after you. So with that, what are they willing to do and what are they willing to say to demonize us? Weapons are part of my religion. There's no other way to put it. It's deeply ingrained in my culture, in my family history. You know, my dad started me shooting when I was 4 or 5 years old. I've been doing it since then, and I have no intent on getting rid of it. What I notice is that we need to get to that point where we're actually don't comply. Simply put, we just peacefully don't comply. And I think that the majority of Americans are waking up to that, especially in the 2A community, when we're looking at the stuff that's happening with the pistol-based ban and they have less than 2% of compliance. You know, you look at the world and you wonder, why are we at this place? You know, we are the most demonized people on planet Earth. And I say that because if you look at the 2A community, every time we just enjoy our rights, it's looked down upon. And that's not how it actually was ever intended to be. You know, our founding fathers, for all their flaws that they had, were one of the groups that actually understood that the 2A was part of being an American. You know, there's a reason why the Second Amendment is enshrined number 2 of 10 rights that are inalienable in our Constitution. And when you look at today's society where they're trying to get rid of this, you know, I've seen multiple times where they're trying to get rid of free speech because it's considered hate speech now. And if any speech should ever be protected, it's hate speech. Whether we like it or not, it's speech that should be allowed to happen. You know, it's part of our discourse in our country where we actually have disagreements. You know, I've been so pissed off about the stuff that's been going on with COVID, or what happened with COVID, that what bothered me most was that it was supposedly settled science. Now, what I know of science comes from, high school, college. Science is never settled. Science is supposed to be debated. Science is supposed to be, if your theory sucks, it's supposed to be proven out. And that didn't happen with COVID. Instead, what we actually had happen was that this was settled science, and anyone that paid those shills that actually settled the science, their way was met. You know, there's a lot of people that didn't do what I did. I took the 2 shots, mostly because I was trying to, this is back when I was still very much a status, I believe, was trying to open up our country. Specifically, I was trying to open up our county. You know, our governor in Northwest New Mexico, or in New Mexico, specifically set out goals that if there wasn't this many people that were vaccinated in the percentage of the population, then they couldn't open up. And I was at that point after, almost a year, that I kind of wanted our country to go back where it was. And the sad fact of the matter is that that's never going to happen. COVID sped along a lot of the agenda I think that the country has. I would like to say that our country doesn't have a secret agenda against the American populace, but I think you'd be blind to not see that there isn't one. It seems that society is broken down, and I say this on my rant on Rumble, and it's mostly because I was frustrated. I'm just tired of seeing, American people being put down for their basic core beliefs that this is who we are. As American citizens, you can't oppress us. Sad fact of the matter is, doesn't matter. You can't look, as much as I think we're winning in a lot of the court cases, unless there's teeth in those court cases, we're kind of still hosed. You watch these people continually try to whittle down your rights. And if you're in the 2A, you know the meme I've mentioned many times, where the guy is like, your first time? Oh, really? We've been here. We've fought these rights, or fought for these rights a lot of times. And it's frustrating to see the Biden administration go so hard against something that's an inalienable right. The fact that once you're an American citizen, the right to self-defense, the right to protect yourself, the right to own those pieces of equipment that will allow you to do that are being whittled away. I watch this stuff and I'm just disheartened because, I expect the American people to stand up. And maybe they have. And why I say that is because there's a low compliance rate with the pistol brace rule. Maybe there was enough people during COVID that bought an AR or an AK or whatever, a pistol caliber, a rifle caliber pistol. That's what I've been calling them. And I keep forgetting that term, but have realized and woken up that it doesn't matter what you do. These people are going to go after you. It's sad that there's not so many people, there's very few of us that will actually step in the ring and say, this is the hill I'm willing to die on. This is the cross I'm willing to bear. We watch more and more people joining the fight, but they're kind of late to the party. We've been talking about this. I've been talking about this type of stuff for a while in the political spaces. We've been subverted. The fact that this woke, and when I say woke, I mean this diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, and I'm all for diversity, equity, and inclusion, is being pushed upon us. And what I mean by that is that, diversity means that anyone who becomes an American citizen, they have those rights. They're inalienable, right? But the fact that you're pushing stuff on us and you see people, even fat people now, are claimed as a protected class. I'm a fat guy. I'm trying to whittle that down. And I don't understand how that's a protected class because you made those choices. I made the choices I did, So why should you, as an American citizen or any other citizen, have to pay for my poor choices? And that seems to be the case, that if you're allowed to, you're not allowed, you're supposed to push against people like me, people that are bucking the system, people that are tired of, being pushed in a box and saying, no, we're done. I don't understand when I watch this stuff happen, how the American people who are supposed to be so steadfast and rock steady are allowing themselves to be run over by the government, The government serves us. It's not the other way around. So why aren't more people standing up? It's frustrating to see people outright lie about the Second Amendment and about the weapons in the Second Amendment, the guns that are now in common use, and saying these are weapons of war, or that, you can change a pistol brace and change the caliber and make it more lethal and deadly. That's not the real case. And how many idiots actually accept that and realize, or don't even realize, what they're saying? These people espouse something because they heard it in a soundbite and they think that's gospel. My soundbites, my podcast, has always been towards fighting for our rights. And to see so many people that are just willing to accept the narrative, so to speak, is disheartening. We as Americans are supposed to be shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm. There was a point in time the left and the right actually got along, and now the left and parts of the right, let's be honest, parrot these little sound bites without ever looking at the research to see if these are correct. The simple fact that we're watching people right now espouse bullshit, no other way to put it, and say that is 100% correct. There will be people that actually parrot Biden's bullshit where he says you can change a pistol brace and make it a higher caliber weapon, more lethal. That's not the case. That's never been the case. You have to do more to an AR-15 to make it more lethal. And it's sad to see so many mainstream media places, well, I guess that may have been always the case, that they're not for the American people. They parrot those bullshit lines and say, yeah, this is a weapon of war. The AR-15 has never been a weapon of war. The AR-15 is one of those rifles that is checks a lot of boxes for Americans. The ammunition is fairly cheap and plentiful. It allows you to practice. Magazines are pretty plentiful. Parts for it, so that you can maintain the weapon, are just as plentiful. But we're in that place where Biden continues to parrot that this is a weapon of war and needs to be put away. He's also the same guy that says you can't own a cannon when we've been able to own a cannon since the Second Amendment, or since this country's existed. There was a point in time where there were privateers that carried some of the best arms on planet Earth and did so under the American flag, even though they were private citizens. Yet we're not allowed to own that now. You watch society as it breaks down, or I do, and I look at how the police went from Barney Fife, from the same kit, same stance as Barney Fife, to looking like soldiers in Afghanistan or Iraq. I understand escalation, but escalation comes in two folds here. Are we normalizing the police state, or have they normalized that? And if they have, why aren't there more people that are just as disturbed as I am that the police state is something that we need to watch for? I've talked about the two-tier justice system. Why is it that elites seem to be able to get away with things that we wouldn't as normal citizens? If I spent or accepted a bribe from Ukraine in the tune of millions, wouldn't I be in jail? Why isn't Biden? Why isn't his son? How is it that my emails are sniffed and snooped through by the federal government, but our president and his son weren't? It makes a lot of glaringly obvious distinctions between us and them. That's never how our country was designed to be. One of the worst things that our federal government ever worried about was a landed gentry of elites, and it seems like we have that now. You look at the banking cabal in the United States. This is conspiracy theory places where people start looking at. But you look at it, is it really conspiracy when you see it happen in real life? A lot of conspiracy people have been proven right time and time again, especially after COVID. I watch that stuff with COVID stuff, and I look at it and go, you were wrong then. What makes you right now? Dr. Rochelle Slajinsky, or whatever the hell her name is, from the CDC, she was brought in front of Congress. She lied to Jim Jordan. The guy that's leading the bandwagon to try to make some people accountable. Better question is whether it's right or left. Why is it that we always see these, tribunals? Let's put them that way. When they don't have enough power to do anything about it. We will never see Fauci be held accountable for all the stuff he pushed down on us, for shutting down our country. And we see the current political environment where we see presidential candidates who still espouse how great it was for Operation Warp Speed, when in reality it was probably one of the worst things the American people ever had to deal with. We watch economists and demographic people talk about things, and they continually skip over that one step where they were wrong. There is something to be said about the simple fact that people are human, that natural immunity exists, and you will not come correct there, and you still seem to think that all the stuff we're seeing in mainstream media comes from Russia, that we're actually being party to Russian propaganda. You're the same people that tell us that the Russians can't prosecute a war or win, and are basically incompetent. So how did they pull the wool over our eyes as American citizens? I don't think they did. There's a lot of people that believed in the bull crap that came around Trump that said, again, not a fan of the orange man, that he was a Russian agent. Is that really the case? You can see time and time again where they're proven wrong, but we're supposed to accept that that is the narrative, that is the truth. Is it really? We had mainstream media come out against Trump and tell us there was a P-tape that showed us all kinds of stuff, and it never materialized. So why are we still in this stance where we're hating on someone who really was just trying to do his best to help us? I'm one of the worst when it comes to Trump. I'm one of the worst when it comes to looking at him and seeing the bad. But I see him and the establishment in general as neocons, people that are trying to get us into wars that we have no business being in. We have no business right now giving weapons and arms and millions and billions of dollars to the Ukraine. Ukraine has proven that they can't win the war with Russia. Their counteroffensive, they've already lost a good portion of the Western weapons we've given them, and yet they keep asking for more. So why are we trying to intercede in World War III, basically, or start World War III, when we should back off? I started this podcast to speak truth to power, and it started to be that point where I'm talking about the Second Amendment and how we should defend it, when in reality, we're at this place where we need to look at past the Second Amendment. We need to look at why our government's doing what it's doing. Are they really for the American people? Because if you watch what's going on, it seems counter to the American people and the American experience. Our southern border should be secure. Let's just be honest. As a libertarian, there's a lot of people that will tell you that you're not supposed to have a border, and there's no such thing as, that invisible line. The fact of the matter is we need that because this is American property. And American property rights trump a lot of things. You see that meme where they say, you're willing to kill someone for a piece of property, a piece of, whatever it is. Well, are they willing to break their own concepts and own rules to take my property? If they are, doesn't that make them an enemy of myself? So as I watch this stuff, I wonder, are we melting down? And if we are, what's going to be reformed? Hard times make weak people. Weak people make hard times. Is that where we're at? Are we in the fourth turning? And if we are we milliseconds away or days away, hours away, days away from an American Civil War? Question I have then is, why would brother fight brother when we should be coming together and realizing who's pushing us to that fringe? There's no sense in Americans who have a shared identity pushing to the edge and saying we don't identify one another. And it's sad to see that there's so many people that are okay with that. During COVID, I talked about this, and I talk about it often on my podcast, how there's enough people that actually woke up and realized that it was a bad plan to rely on the state to protect you. They started defending themselves. They started buying weapons. There are more firearms now in the United States than there are people. Why is that? It's not because we all became gun people. It's because we realized that we couldn't depend on the state for our own defense. So it makes absolutely no sense right now where we're at. The leftists who keep going and saying that it's the gun, you idiot. Is it really? Or is it the fact that we've lost contact with our people and we're not actually talking to one another? We're not actually reaching across that aisle, and we can't. And the reason why we can't is because some people are so dyed in the wool in their camp that any incursion there is seen as an enemy attack. And that's not really the case. Americans have way more in common with other Americans than we do with other people coming here. And I'm not faulting people for coming here. Our country is the best and brightest star on the planet still. But you need to come here knowing that you have an obligation to keep this country what it is. New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union has always been trying to keep New Mexico tactical. New Mexico is behind the blue iron curtain. And I say that because this state is ruled by leftists. The governor is already talking about the next session where they start making rules and trying to decide state policy where they're going to try to come down on gun control. New Mexico isn't completely lost yet, but we're getting close. Those bullshit laws that keep pushing the left agenda where we start talking about abortion up until birth. We talk about kids being given consent when they can't consent to anything. That stuff is coming home to roost in New Mexico. The large population centers are the ones that push that. The path forward, as I see it, is just to peacefully non-comply. They keep expecting us to keep complying. If we don't, then what are they going to do? Simply put, there aren't enough law enforcement agents to come door to door. And if they do, there's enough people, I hope, that will rise up and say enough's enough. The best way we go forward is affecting our local population the best way we can. How do we do that? Be active in your local community. Vote in your local elections. Make sure that your local people understand and know where you're coming from. And that's how we get out of this. Like, share, subscribe, be great.